Rock and roll. Kia ora, everybody. What's up? It is Robert. Haven't done one of these live like this in a little bit, so I thought we'd jump back into the mix. But what I wanted to talk about is last week or the weekend just after America's Cup, there was an incident. It was a cultural potential misappropriation issue. There was some pukanas going down on some $1 million boats in the viaduct. There was some racial sentiments got brought up, and I was in a tricky spot. I know some of the people that were involved with it, but also I'm part Māori, part Pākehā, and I thought I would use this opportunity to bring on a good friend of mine. It's also a bit of a weapon when it comes to these things to talk about this instance in particular, because I do think that we're having a moment. So without further ado, going to bring in my good bro, Te Aroha Pukana. How are you, my friend?
Te Māori, brother. Te Māori.
So the description of this video was...
So you know, you're 100% Māori. You're 100% all your other ethnicities. Let's not go down the part, Ralph. Expand yourself.
Well, my mother was definitely not Māori, but I feel no. Actually, that's a good point. We'll jump into there in a bit, because even just that alone, when it probably messes with people's headspace a little bit. Let's get into this. The description of this video was that racist? So I will ask you, Te Aroha, and I think we've got pretty similar views to some part of this, but I wanted to kind of come to someone who knows the space extremely well when it comes to extremes, when it comes to culture. Was this racist?
I think racist is a really strict term. I think there was maybe an issue of sensitivity, and that sensitivity is basically the spectrum that we're on, and where are we on that spectrum? That's the question you're asking me. And I just happen to be up the end where there's a lot of tolerance, because I've been, I think if I look at that spectrum, it might also correlate with the victimization spectrum. And so who out there feels like they're victims? And so if we think about the cultural knowledge, the intellect, let's say, or the content, at least, let's call it content. If we think about this in our Western worldview, that's legislation, and that's protected by things like IP. So let's have a conversation about it as if it's map it to the IP concept. Well, IP is a way of kind of telling people, here's this big stick I can batter you about with. And so what does that mean with cultural content? And so if we look at the All Blacks, for example, they've kind of proven this content is accessible. And actually this content has a space and a position in space and time. And those positions are usually reserved for very sacred. So I think your problem here is it wasn't kind of kept in its own little bubble. It got out on social media. And so it got into the platforms where the spectrum of sensitivity just blows open wide. And you know all about the attention economy and everything that you get from trolls to tolerators. And so it's a kind of an IP conversation. It's a sensitivity around who feels like they're a victim. I personally think there are legitimate victims and illegitimate victims about the issue. And that's just a debate that you can have personally. So I'm more tolerant. I don't like making light or fun of the culture, but I like being light and fun. And so, I think everyone's valid in their view, and I'll protect the validation of my view, and I think people should protect the validation of theirs, and we should all be sensitive, because we're just 180 years behind the 8 ball, brother. And I hope we're not spending in 18 years' time we've got this kind of issue, because at the end of the day, this is a content issue, and New Zealand doesn't know its historical content.
Well, the optics of it, so let's rewind back. The optics of it is you've got drunk Pākehā and white crew on a boat using an intent of humor behind the pukana, right? Now, I don't know if it's better or worse that the boat was actually Māori named from Mowbray and stuff, but because I got hit up quite a few times about it from multiple people. They were asking, yo, is this shit stuffed or what's the flipping go here? And I said, look, we don't know the context of each individual's relationship with te reo or with Māori or the Māori culture. But what I would say is, and we've kind of talked about this briefly before, if you are choosing to, if you don't mess with Māori culture, you don't embrace Māori culture, you can't speak te reo, can't do the haka, you mess with nothing Māoridom. If anything, at times you potentially give it shit. But you use this moment to then pull culture when it's convenient for you in that moment, then it's kind of a flippin' dick move, because you are choosing to use it when it's very convenient for you in that time to use that culture for your needs. But then the rest of the time it's like stuff that, and exactly to your point before, and I think we've talked about it in the past, is, in some ways there are the uncomfortable truth it feels is there are a lot of hypocritical New Zealanders who will feel extremely prideful when there's the unity of purpose on a Saturday night when they watch the All Blacks play Australia for the Bledisloe Cup, when we lead with the haka and we're out there at the front and it's the flippin', we feel prideful of culture, of that culture. But 48 hours later, and it's like, flippin' Maori, stuff those guys, bloody Brownies, South Auckland crew, I don't know, crew, whatever it may be. So there is an uncomfortable lens, which I think is good that's been brought up. So to your point around, talkability around these things, my initial take was, if they are choosing to use culture at that moment, but they don't want to mess with the rest of it, stuff you, that's pretty flippin' racist and stuffed. But we don't know some of the people that were in it. What if they grew up on a marae? What if they can speak full today? Like, there might be, you can't just blanket everyone. And I think to your point before, it's probably a interesting time because it gets to bring up the opportunity for people to talk about it, about the content, about the IP, about all of that too. I just did feel that, full cancel culture on people for one thing at one time was probably not the smartest thing, because if you hide it in the shadows of just straight cancel, you don't actually, they've got attention, but they don't have education or empowerment or awareness around it, and then they go into the shadows. I would rather uncomfortable conversations with anyone to at least bring more out to see a different perspective. So probably similar to you, I was so borderline of like, because you don't know the then what, I couldn't throw the full hammer down, but I was interested in your take of probably just those 2 points of cultural, association when it suits. Like, you can't just choose to just pick culture when it's suitable for you at that time, and then the rest of the time dismiss it. It's either it can't be both. I think that was sort of my point.
Yes, I mean, simple construct. I mean, if we go back to the legislation analogy and kind of correlate that to, because compliance is a Western best practice for best human practice, and tikanga is the Māori kind of best practice, human practice. And so, as if these things kind of come together, and Te Ao Māori is going, well, this content is tapu, and this one is saying, well, this content is special, and so who has the mana, who has had the mana transferred to them so that they can perform this haka, and I think if they had contained it within their bubble, other things would have occurred to them. There's spiritual consequences to these things if you don't use them appropriately. There's mental consequences, there's well-being consequences. I know the Western world kind of hasn't gripped those things as well. Māori are still deep into those constructs, but there's those consequences. But if it gets out into the world, there's other physical consequences. And so it's an interesting time that we can all see each other immediately at any time, anywhere, and talk about these very sacred tapu issues. We haven't really thought about the tapu as a Māori seatbelt framework. It tells you what seatbelts you should be wearing. And if you're going a high-speed vehicle and there's no seatbelts, that's kind of the analogy. You can put on your seatbelt. What does that look like? It might mean engaging with some Māori. Christian Cullen might be able to transfer the mana to you if he's in that video, but I dare you, I bet you Christian Cullen would never be in that video. Do you know what I mean? He would never be in that situation, because he's been through the education, he's understood the content, he understands the tikanga values, and so probably and holds them sacred. So these are the things that we've got to be sensitive to, so that we can move down this spectrum. I mean, I think that the mitigation of some of the issues that we have is really about intent. This is the crux of my corridor. What was your intent behind it? And so if they did a 60-minute interview and, you know, there was some intent that eventually kind of made us go, oh, you know, but attention economy doesn't give us the in-depth analyses of what they were experiencing. They just, you know, you can see what they did. They just went, oh, I'm going to get cancelled, and they just ran away. That means no one can hold the conversation, and that means people are going to falsify their preferences and not really own up to who they are. It's a tragedy.
When you talk to Māori in your circle, what was the overarching theme and vibe of that issue? What was the feedback in general?
Half, man.
Yeah, right? See, I was the exact same.
And and there was no specific situation. There was no kind of other correlating data. I was like, wow, this is kind of just half and half.
Well, flip it the other way. If they didn't do Pukana and let's say 10 drunk white dudes all did the haka on that boat, would that have been different? Because at the same point of like who has the manatu or not, like what gives you that, not necessarily that right, but let's say if it was in hypothetical Netsky does a video and it's 10 drunk white dudes doing a haka on the boat, would that be better or worse than what happened with Pukana? I know we're going down to hypotheticals, but
no. The sensitivities, as you add elements, the sensitivities, you know, get exponential. So you just added white guys. Well, that just, you know, gets exponential. Now there's 10 of them. That just gets exponential. So the situation gets exponential the more elements that are added. And so, you know, if the intent
is the thing.
Yes, intent is the thing.
Yeah.
So for someone to actually even take the video, what was their intent? Did the group? Yeah, do you know what I mean? They basically exponentialized their the consequences by someone taking it on video. They didn't just have to deal with the spiritual ones, which we think are going to affect them. They actually had to deal with the whole global issue now because everyone's seen it and witnessed it. So, you know, manage your tapu, man. You know, well, manage your values of existence.
I felt sorry for the DJ because they don't have context. Fly in, do a gig, everyone's partying, having a good time, some crew doing some shit. I can almost 150% guarantee you he doesn't have a flipping clue about the context of Māori culture with what means what and who does what and who has the right or the intent. He doesn't know that shit. I mean, I would probably go to 90% of the countries in the world. I could be in a situation and not have a flipping clue what was happening in terms of specific nuances of their culture. So I'm not saying the dude gets a flipping pass. Like, because he obviously came out and was like, dude, I stuffed up. I had no idea. I'm going to educate myself. Great soundbite. Sweet. I get it. It just, you know, I've been in situations, for example, Waitangi Day 2005 in Whistler, Canada, middle of a snowstorm, outside the bar, and flipping, it's a bunch of Kiwis going hard at the haka, and they were going for it, right? Now, they're not all Māori, but they felt pride in that moment, and I flipping joined them, and it was giddy up and go, right? Simultaneously, what makes things right or wrong, and who has the right for that mana or thing? And I think the number one word is intent. What was the intent? If it's out of humor to like, hey, this is kind of funny, blah, 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 culture, stuff you, that's pretty shit. But once again, what happens if someone was smiling that was doing it, that can full speak to or that's one of the boys that blah, 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 you know, it's funny that within Māori was 50-50, but go.
You basically said it with the DJ. He spelled out his intent. He got straight onto the airwaves immediately, apologized. You know, we didn't see that from anyone else. They just disappeared. And there's a narrative inside of that. He spelled out his intent. But we also know that half of the people who saw the original content don't see this new content as clickbait, and they don't even know that he's telling that story. So these are some of the consequences. You know, I mean, the attention economy accelerates the first big, huge hit impact soundbite, and then doesn't even allow the DJ to kind of say to those same people, oh man, this was my intent, because they don't care about his apology.
So So rewind back a couple of years, the LA Clippers, right? Sterling, the owner, said a bunch of racist remarks, got kicked out and had to sell the team to Steve Ballmer from Microsoft, who then bought the team. Now, everyone was like, this is great. Dude gets out, stuff him, can't have racists in that shit. He's out of there, blah, blah, blah. I forget who it was, but someone actually came out saying that was the worst thing that could have happened by him selling the team. And they said, why is that? And he goes, well, now you've allowed the racism to just slide off into the dark and have those conversations that exist, that we've known existed in more private rooms, opposed to bring it to light and force the issue of like, cool, now get educated. Now let's talk about it now, ... And in ways he was basically saying, by getting instantly cancelled, gave him a pass not to have the uncomfortable public conversation of what needed to be had, but basically pushed him to the side to be able to hide in the shadows. And his point was, and you could translate a little bit to exactly what you're talking about, Te Aroha, of just cancelling the accounts. I don't think they should have cancelled their accounts. They're drunk, having fun with their friends, I get it. The intent was off, they stuffed up, whatever it is. It's like, perfect learning opportunity. Let's have a flipping chat and bring it forward, because if there is no doubt everyone's going to do some dumb shit in their life if they've not done already. And if the instant push, and this isn't in defense of what they did, I'm just saying that deleting and going into social hiding for something that you've done once that you clearly now regret is very clear. I don't think a one and done approach to like humanity is the way you actually progress societies and culture, right? That doesn't really feel like, regardless whether you agree with that moment, there's topics and issues. The topics was that, but the bigger issue of, you know, I'm probably with you. I don't think it was probably, they didn't need to delete everything. Let's have this conversation, you know. I don't feel, I mean, dude, we've stuffed up many a times, but we're not disappearing into hiding for the next 80 years. Like, what are we doing? Like, what, you know?
Well, I think you've got, you know, basically, if there's another spectrum, there's cancellation and transformation. And sometimes cancellation can be transformation. But, you know, to your point, with the LA Clippers opportunity, he could have gone through a transformation program and been explicit about it, put it all over social media, and really used the soundbite economy against itself and created a new, do you know what I mean? A new brand identity. But maybe cancellation actually helps him to go and sneak away into the dark, to be the thing. It's a tragedy. I think at the end of the day, the intent, if you're cancelling, to me, is really about, if you can't just jump on some media platform and say, hey, nah, that wasn't me, when you're in that kind of limelight, I think you are running away. I think you are skirting away. So that's a personal Te Aroha grace view.
No, I get it. And I felt a bit tricky too, because I personally know some of the people that are involved in this situation, and as time goes on, and there's going to be more and more things that happen with people, you know, that get through this. And I just think, to your point, there's opportunity for transformation, or at least education. There's awareness, but if it's awareness and hiding, that kind of dips the issue of the education and empowerment and kind of public, you know, opportunity side to grow, right? And there will no doubt be many a times where, you know, I say something, you say something, we do something, we see something. It feels like the formula feels a little broken in society if you do that one thing once. Now, obviously, we're a bit more emotional about this one because it hits a bit closer to home for obvious reasons. But I don't think I don't think society grows unless you have more of those type of chats. And net, I feel it's a bad thing. So I'm not trying to say to come out and say everything they did was okay. It's like, no, I'd just rather, let's not hide it to the side and actually have a conversation, you know? Or the question I'd be asking is, okay, well, how could we make it more, more approachable for those that haven't messed with the Māori culture or Māori language or Māori heritage to try and engage with it? How do you open more doors for opportunity and engagement without, even within Māori culture, feeling like, oh, I'm not Māori enough? Or if they're Pākehā, oh, I'm not Māori, that's not my thing, you know? So yeah, I feel a little, I feel it's a potential huge lost opportunity if we don't try to have more of these chats as well. And we've got Ashley Nathan has just chopped in and said "Ata Māori e Koroa," so he's jumping in, legend. Hey Ashley, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a text that says "join us" and with a link. If you click that link, you can literally, it will come and join us. And Ashley, Nathan, you are more than welcome to join us, because I would love his take on it as well, because it's funny from someone with a Te Aroha in your world, you're saying it's a 50-50 split. In my world, it was 50-50 split. And I'm just thinking, why the split? Is it because there's not context, or because they didn't know the intent?
Mm.
You know, I don't know the answer, because what if Christian Cullen was in the background and he had that money to do it? What if out of the 10 drunk white dudes, one of them is fully down with the cause and the other 9 are taking the piss? How does that split? You know, but it's such a gray, you know, and to be honest, the answer is not going to come from Pākehā. They're not going to say, oh, this is what you can do with your culture. This is what's right and wrong with your culture. No one's going to say shit on that. Like, that shit's not going to happen.
Well, the problem is if Christian Cullen went, well, all I know is we were celebrating some guy's 90th and I decided to do the haka and 10 drunk guys jumped in. Wow. By the time that story gets out, it's done. That's the issue. The issue is despite his intent, and, you know, because those situations can happen. You could be the sober guy that starts a haka and of course everyone jumps in, and actually, you know, it depends on the wairua or the spirituality of the moment, you know. You're reading the room. All of these things are part of the consequential matrix paradigm.
It's so tricky, man. And I mean, net, I think it's good I think it's bad that everyone goes into hiding around something that could be an opportunity for transformation opportunity. But then I also feel it needs to be a solid red flag for many to know, yo, you just don't go throwing this shit around anymore. You know, it's the same way. I mean, Ryan Charlton said before on here, he said, it's the same when Americans wear Native American clothing or have blackface parties. Of course, it's racist. They're disrespecting the cultures of various people of color. Simple. And I don't know if Ryan knows, but, you know, there was a bit of a backlash. I've seen that were DJs and people going to EDM festivals over in Europe and stuff that were wearing, you know, Indian sort of garments and stuff, and it's not till that came out. You know, if you look at the NFL now, the Washington Redskins literally just changed the name to the Washington football team to take away the Redskins for the culture and heritage that comes with that word. So I think there's opportunity. Ashley, if you're still watching or listening, click the link, mate, join us. I'd love to have your feedback. Or if you are just watching this, regardless where you're at or what you are doing, you're more than welcome to join the conversation. If you've got a point of view on this, it's not that it's right or wrong. I think the conversation just needs to be had, because literally cancelling humans for one dumb thing they're doing drunk, we'd all be flipping cancelled, right? Like, let's just stop that shit. Like, that's not helping any of it. So if you were to go back, how would you rejig this so it didn't go this way, or did it go the way it should have? What do you
have to go back in time, mate. It's a history lesson. The world is suffering from a history lesson of its domination complex. And
what do you mean by that?
Societies around the world are in this situation where their content is now kind of accepted as something that should exist, because a Western paradigm has kind of allowed it to exist now. I mean, for various reasons, ranging from religion, etc., that the culture has moved through. It's had all these restrictions on everyone else's content. And we know from a cultural perspective, dominating cultures have done that. Doesn't matter what color they are or what the shape of their faces are. These are what these dominated cultures have done. And they've cancelled dominated cultures. And so now you're seeing, it's almost like a return of cancel culture by virtue of some historical crap. And so to the point I made about the spirituality consequences of doing the haka wrong, these are some of the things. I mean, you know, it doesn't just happen in a week's time. It's unpredictable. It can be intergenerational. And the whole concept is designed around just us here and now being more respectful of each other.
Yeah. Speak of the devil, we've been joined. He's listened to us. He's got the link. He's clicked it. He's trying to get a place to sit down so we can get the audio. But ladies and gentlemen, the bro, Ashley, Nathan, join us. How are you, my friend?
Morena, team. Oh, lovely to see you, fellas.
Atamari e hoa.
Atamari.
Me tō noho takiuri tēnei wā.
I was having to listen to you fellas talking. I was trying to find a spot to actually have a corridor with you, because I'm at Kura at the moment and there's all these people walking around, and even for me, just to even engage in this conversation, I still get a little bit whakamā because there's so many opinions and there's so many people that if I said something sort of inappropriate to them, might cause some naru-narus, eh? So,
But that whakamā is an energy that manages you, eh? It manages you.
It's also with age too, right? And so for quick context, Ashley is doing a full year Māori immersion school. It sounds aggressive and intense, and Te Aroha's beautiful wife is also doing it as well. So you're very plugged into the spot. But I want to jump on that point exactly specifically, Ashley. Is it because you're younger within Māori culture that you have respect for the elders that you don't feel it's your place to have an opinion to say publicly, or something else?
I think, yeah, there's a lot of things that come to mind for me. Like, I am aware that I am younger, so I need to have respect for my elders. And I understand that. But at the same time, I think part of my kaupapa as to why I'm learning now is so that I can have a voice and that I can have a say and that I can, I guess, give my perspective or my opinion on these matters. But in myself, feel like I am... I've got the confidence and the ability and also like the permission to, because I feel like I can't have a say on these topics in my own self, each to their own, right? Kei a koe tō kaupapa, up to you. But for me, I'd like to speak Māori and I'd like to know a bit more about our culture and the depth of it before I speak on these matters and say things that I feel. So yeah, that's just me in this space.
Well, I asked that because there's a text chain that Barry Suter's got up with a whole bunch of like older Māori weapons in business, and I've been on this text group for 3 years, and I no shit have probably only said 3 things, and I've been wondering. I was like, why can't I speak in this? I can talk shit about anyone here. I'm like, stop. I'm just going to say what I think, and I get to this one thing, and I don't say shit. And to your point, I don't feel that. And that's why I asked if it was an age thing. Maybe it was my own insecurities asking the question. I don't feel that I have the right to say shit on that chain, because those that are in there are older than me. They're more experienced than me. They're out of pure respect for age and wisdom and culture. I don't feel I can. I don't know if that's the right or wrong answer. That's why I actually asked that there, because in many respects there'd be potentially some within Māori and be like, oh well, who are you boys to flip and talk about this shit? You don't, you know, and not that it comes from within culture itself, but I can see why you'd ask that question, because you want to have an opinion, but you want to do it. I guess you're trying to learn to navigate the right way to try and say that publicly, maybe. I'm not sure.
Aye, because I've been in these situations recently where, like, I've been hanging around quite knowledgeable people in Te Ao Māori, but I still feel like I'm like, oh, shucks, like I better not sort of like get too much into potentially how like my kaupapa and my whakaaro around the things that they're talking about, because I don't have that language, or I don't have that sort of understanding or knowledge yet.
Yeah.
But I feel like once I do, I hope that I'm an agent of change, because the things that are happening in these spaces, I don't agree with them. I feel like there are some spaces out there that I go to where for some reason or another, like I don't feel like I can engage in those conversations, or it's almost like a cliquey sort of thing, like it's weaponized sometimes. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, we're all Māori, right? What is your kaupapa? Is your kaupapa to be a gatekeeper and to be like, oh, like you don't know as much as what I do, so you sit over there and I'll sit over here with the people that know a lot? Or is your kaupapa to manaaki Māori culture and Māori people and bring as many of us along the journey as possible with you?
Well, weaponize is that interesting word, and you probably then ask your question of if a situation is getting weaponized within culture itself, is it actually more the question of, are you then subconsciously thinking, am I Māori enough to have a position here? Is that kind of what you're talking about, like enough zhuzh internally to be able to talk about it, or does it just feel like you're trying to, you know, navigate your way through safely, but trying to do it with those who actually want you to come up on the journey with them, not kind of exclude you out? It's tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky. And I mean, this could all just be personal opinions on the matter and personal feelings and personal insecurities. Who knows? But I just feel like there are some people that I hang out with that are more than willing to offer support, offer any sort of uffy, like, oh, this is the word that you can use there, or, you know, you might have missed this right here. And then there are others where I go into these spaces and it's like, oh, I don't even feel welcome to sit near them. You know what I mean? And that's just my personal whakaaro. And these are things that I'm learning along the way. And I'm comfortable to share with you guys because I know that I love you both. But like, you know, the more that I learn, the more that I'll unpack all of those feelings and those emotions.
Isn't that stuff that with sometimes the barriers of you to progress within culture comes from, whether it be true or not, from those within that same culture?
Right.
Like there's an opening line of Jack Harlow's song Tyler Hero, and he says, the ones that hate me the most look just like me. You tell me what that means. And it's a pretty deep line, you know. Then he goes on to a whole bunch of other stuff, but it's like the ones who hate me the most just look like me, because he's a white boy in a rap world, right? And you know, I know that it's the Eminem 2.0, but I just think it was a pretty interesting insight that, you know, we spent the last 5 minutes actually talking about not fear or defense from outside of culture itself that's been empowered, but actually some of the biggest fears from within culture itself.
And I just think that the number one kaupapa for, in my opinion, Māori, myself anyways, that's why I'm trying to learn, is that I can make others in our culture feel like it's okay to learn. It's okay to engage in these conversations. It's okay to not speak that ill. Like, that's fine. Everything is okay. You know, you are Māori enough and you are worthy enough to sit with me, to sit with people in our circles, regardless of if you can speak Māori or not. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, it's not Māori enough. Te Araha said before, no, you are Māori.
Yeah, you are. But yeah, that's my whakaaro. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Te Araha. What do you reckon?
I think, you know, you've accumulated some. How you accumulate mana throughout your life is eventually creates a persona around you, and that the ihi or the awe that you feel of someone, that's some of the awe that you're feeling. I mean, these are experts that you're arguably going, whoa, you know, I have to be this level of expert to go and have a conversation with that expert. So I'm breaking down some of the experiences that how I've had those experiences of, whoa, can I sit next to that person? Well, you know, I've been dreaming in Te Reo Māori for about 5 years now. And now, because of the self-love tool, and then, you know, Ashley's on this journey, but this is the thing that I know now. Oh man, I'm confident in using these holy sound waves. I can go now have a conversation with that person. And part of that for me was the complex of not wanting to be an imposter when I spoke to them. An imposter to myself as well. I mean, this is part of the culture trauma that, you know, we've intergenerationally experiencing. And you know, I'm excited about, you know, Ashley's generation, the ones that are still arriving, because, you know, I see less of a need to be a soldier for protecting Māori, you know, other than some of these experiences which we're talking about now. The question is that more brutal than when we used to get our land stolen, you know, taken from us? These are the kinds of some of the ways that I think about the intent, because at the premise of all that we've said is really, what is the intent of the user of this content?
Well, you start to wonder, if you take the business world with the old boys club, where it's, you know, the young bucks are coming up and the old ways have sort of done it that way. If Ashley's world and my world will be the new old dogs, but we're inclusive, not exclusive, where it's about empowerment, not exclusion. If we're that, we've essentially only got, it's a time game, right? Because if the old dogs are inclusive, then that next generation is going to be way more. There might be 10x their type of next generation of young bucks who wouldn't feel bad to come approach an Astley or a you or ... you know. And so I think if the mindset generationally is more open at our level, it will just get better and better. Because, as you know, if you take the alignment of the age with our age group compared to, you know, 30, 40 years up, if there are handbrakes or whatever up there, if you combine the pure asset of the DNA of Māoridom, which is a huge, you know, empowering thing for us, as it gets older and it continues to grow, Plus, with the commercial and the community side, where you've got CEOs learning te reo, when you've got more, Māori Language Week getting bigger and bigger, and the culture gets bigger too, the openness around Māori culture in decades to come is actually only going one way. It's an increasing asset, right? Like if there is stocks, if Māoridom's going on an IPO, like we're getting in on that shit. Like it is only going up, it's which I think actually probably gets you or us potentially more excited for what our culture could look like.
I've got to head off, brothers, but before I go, I think about this. It was only 1 or 2 generations above us that our ancestors felt excluded. And we can't imagine that today. But, I feel confident that I'm not going to be excluded everywhere I go. We can't imagine that idea of segregation. So I think things are getting better. And, we're now having we've got the opportunity to speak back and respond now like never before. And technology has given us some of that leverage. #MeToo, all these beautiful things. And as you know, Rebecca, we don't need a production house anymore to set up a studio and have these conversations. But tēnā koutou whānau, awesome kōrero e wāma. Haere tonu, keep going. Mauri ora.
Sure, brother. My man. So maybe I'll jump on this. So when we were talking about, if you saw the thing before, obviously the incident in the boat, what was your initial take on it when you first saw what came out? And then what was the feedback from, second question, what was the feedback from those in your circle around it? Like, what was the initial sort of kickoff of what had happened and what you felt?
What was my initial reaction? Oh man, I don't even, to be honest with you, with the journey that I'm on now, full immersion te reo Māori, I just don't have time to really buy into all of that shit. Like, that's just straight up. Like, I'm like, I see it. I'm like, okay, it's just happened. It is what it is. I'm moving on to focus on learning te reo. Like, but I did see it. And I just don't know if I have an opinion, and I don't want to say one and sound sort of ignorant to the situation. Do you know what I mean? Did I get massively offended? No, I didn't. I understand what's going on there. People are drunk. There's a DJ. People are just having fun. They're like, yeah, people do Pukanaaaaaaaa, do Pukanaaaaaaaa. Like I've seen it. And I've seen Māori people do that too. You know what I mean? If that was all Māori, would it be an issue?
No.
I don't think so. But because they're all white, and maybe they are taking the mickey out of it, which isn't okay. But at the same time, we've all been at a party, we've all been somewhere where like someone's like, blah, blah, or maybe someone does a haka and like, blah, you know what I mean? Like things escalate so quickly, especially when you're drinking. So I have sympathy for Netsky, was it?
Yeah.
I have sympathy for him. Like, I understand the mistake that was made. Like, I don't really judge or sort of condemn people for things like that. If it was, something a lot worse, maybe, then yeah. But I mean, to some people, that is the worst thing that you can do is like, what are you calling it?
Misappropriate culture.
Misappropriate culture. Yeah, for humor. And I get it. I understand. But personally, I wasn't like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
then my circles, 50-50. I've got friends that are white that are like, bro, why you guys, and Māori. Like, I've got friends on this side that are like, people are just going too far with this. Obviously, the guy's just drunk, having a bit of fun with his mates on a boat. And then there's the other side that are like, yeah, that's horrible what he did. They misappropriate our culture. They think it's funny. So yeah, I just sit in the middle of all of it, to be honest. Like, I think I'm a bit of a 50-50. I'm on the fence when it comes to all of these situations. I did have a situation recently in my family, though. My grandfather. Yeah.
Don't let Katie get you in trouble, but continue.
Yeah, well, no, it's truth, it's my truths. And I was talking to my grandfather the other night, and he's real supportive of the journey. But he's like 70, Pākehā, and, straight Pākehā. He grew up in an age that was different to now, where Māori wasn't really accepted, where it was kind of, I don't know. I don't really understand the situation that they were in, but it's not what it is now. right? Now it's celebrated. Now it's promoted. Now it's used in media. Now it's everything. It's everywhere. And he was saying something along the lines of da 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 da. Oh, and you married, or the married. Normally, I don't say anything. Normally, whatever, like all good. I can't be bothered engaging in a conversation. But this time, I've been at Kura. I'm learning a lot more. I'm a lot more passionate about my culture. I'm tired. I'm so tired. Like it's such a drain. Like it's just every day you're just bombarded with information. And I just said, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. You saying marry. And he's like, why not? And I go, because it's not the right way to say it. Like, this. And he goes, oh, what should I say, Māori? Should I say Māori? And I go, yeah, you can say Māori, like Māori bread. And he goes, oh yeah, but like that's not how I was taught. I was taught to say marry, like when I was growing up. And I was like, yeah, but you know the difference. You know the difference. And it's such a subtle change, but to me and your family, it'll mean the world, or it'll mean like a lot to me anyways. And it was real interesting to hear him sort of come back at me and say, oh, that's how I was taught and that's how I say it. And I'm not wrong. And I'm like, well, yeah, you are. And then we just left it and I kind of just boosted and I was like, oh, all good. Love you. See you later.
Yeah. But if you get educated for something wrong and that means you feel it's right, you think it's right because it's what you were taught, And I remember one of my good friends, I won't say his name because he's a good man, grew up down south in the Southern Lakes, never met Māori, never hung out with Māori, doesn't have Māori friends because, in Wanaka there's maybe 3 Māori, right? Not too many. So he ended up becoming one of my good mates. And oh shit, you got to go to school, bro. You got about to go to class. This is the school bell. What I was going to quickly say is we finally caught up and he said, bro, you need to realize my truth from what I've known from Māoridom. I've never met Māori, never been friends with Māori, never hung out with Māori, live with Māori, nothing. The only Māori I see are on Police 10-7 on the news, we're in the behind the court. That's my only engage with it, and the All Blacks. So think about what my truth or perception is from your culture when I haven't actually engaged with it. And I was like, shit, So it's a pretty it's good that we're having the conversation. Look, I don't want you to go to detention or to the principal. I can only imagine it's probably aggressive. I appreciate your time, my friend.
It's not detentions. If you're late, you got to go into class and you got to sing a waiata by yourself.
Oh, well, I don't think you want to do that.
No, they don't want me to do that. Nobody wants to hear that.
Much love, my bro. I appreciate it. Hi to all the crew. Give Kitty and Lillian and all the fams. I said big what up, and I'll talk to you in a little bit, eh? Proud of you, bro.
Hakite, brother.
Shaji, later, Bolt.
Later.
My man. Good banter. Good questions. Good chat. And that is some of the feedback. Obviously, our age demographic, we're probably seeing it from both sides a little bit. Hopefully you got a little bit of value. I've been wanting to get Te Aroha on for a little bit. We stuffed up over the weekend, so I got to do it quickly this morning. Hope you enjoyed it. It is very clear that what was seen as a liability for many years around culture within Māori and New Zealand is now becoming an asset. And my suggestion would be, when you stuff up, don't go cancel culture and just hide in the shadows for the next 80 years. Shit won't work. And B, if those like us that are in the middle now are more open to these type of conversations, then I think it is a lost opportunity for, as Te Aroha was talking about, transformation or the opportunity for growth and education. And apologies for the DJ, I had no idea in context, and feel bad for Mowbray because obviously he didn't know what was potentially happening on his boat with the details, and those within it. Te Aroha probably said it perfectly. What was the intent? What was the intent? So next time you're in a situation, something happens, yes, there's lots of grey, muddy waters which you need to try and navigate through. No one has the right answer, but the question, which is 100% very clear, what was your intent? That was it, team. So I've got a mini new setup. It's actually a green screen behind me, so I can put lots of stuff there. Lights and stuff set up a little bit differently, and the computer's in front of me, so I can try and get it rolling here. Enjoy the day. I hope it was all good. Feels like I haven't done one of these in a little while, but I felt this was a good opportunity to bring up something that is pretty important and a pretty interesting moment in time, because clearly even within Māori culture, if it is a 50-50 split on whether it's a right or wrong, a misappropriation or just a stuff up or whatever it may be, it's a good time to do it. So appreciate the day. Have a good time. Adios. See you soon. Peace.